All right, so when solving equations by squaring or square rooting, first let's talk about squaring numbers or numbers that are perfect squares. So you have your base number here and then your exponent there, which means 2 squared or 2 to the second power. 2 to the second power means 2 times 2, which is 4. Now we have parentheses here around our negative. That's very, very important because that means negative 2 times negative 2. A negative times a negative is also a positive. So when you have parentheses around, you will get a positive number. If you have just negative 2 squared, this really means negative 1 times 2, which is negative 1 times 4, which equals negative 4. So the parentheses do make a difference, especially when typing it into your calculator. So here, 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Negative 3 squared, or the quantity negative 3 squared, is negative 3 times negative 3. Again, the parentheses make a big difference because you get a positive. 4 times 4 is 16. Negative 4 times negative 4 is still 16. So that's squaring a number. Now the opposite of squaring a number is called a square root, where we do the inverse of squaring. So here we have the square root of 4. This is the opposite of squaring a number. So what number times itself equals 4 is what we're trying to figure out. And this, just when we take just a number like this, the square root of 4, we just get one answer of 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. Now the square root of 9 here, again, what number times itself equals 9? That is 3. So now we get into solving equations with squaring and square rooting. Here I have a number squared, or x squared, equals 100. So in order to get x all by itself, we have to do the inverse operation, which the opposite of squaring is to square root. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. The square root of x squared is x. Now here's where it's a little bit different. When you square root an equation, you're going to get two answers because there's two possibilities. Because what number times itself equals 100? We talked about this kind of at the beginning. Okay, so 10 times 10 equals 100. But also, if we take negative 10 times negative 10 in parentheses there, you also get 100. So there are two possible answers when you square root an equation, and only when you square root an equation. So here we're going to square root, which is the inverse of squaring, and I get 2 and negative 2. The inverse of squaring is square rooting. X, the square root of x squared equals x. What I do to one side, do to the other. So x is 9 and negative 9. Here I get 7 and negative 7. Here I get 4 and negative 4. Again, that means when you substitute 4 into x, 4 squared is 16. And when you substitute negative 4 in for x, you get the quantity negative 4 squared, which is negative 4 times negative 4, which also equals 16. So here we are going to square root again, because we have y squared right there. And what we do to one side, we need to do to the other side. So this gives me y, and I'm going to get two answers again. When you take the square root of 625 in your calculator, you get 25, but you need to know that when you square root something, you get one positive and one negative. So here we go. Now we have a fraction in which we need to square root. When you square root one side, you square root the entire other side, but with a fraction you can do the top and the bottom. So I get a, because the inverse of a squared is, the square root of a squared is just a. the square root of 64 is 8. The square root of 81 is 9. But remember, we get two answers. Same thing over here. So that gives you more of an idea of what we are looking for. So we get 2 over 3 and negative 2 over 3 because when we square root an equation, we get two possible answers. So we have the area of a square rug. First, we need to know the area of a square rug. Capital A means area. Area of a square rug is side squared, right? Because all sides of a square, well, that's a great square. All sides of a square have the exact same measurement. So we don't do length times width because that implies that the sides are different in measurement. We do side times side, which is side squared. So the area of a square rug, so I have area equals side squared, but I am going to substitute how much my area is 1,200. So we want to find the length of one side. So here we are going to need to square root to find s, because that is the inverse operation of squaring. So the square root of s squared is s, but what we do to one side, we do to the other. What is the exact length of one side? Well, if we are going to go the exact length, we have to leave it like this, because if you plug that into your calculator, you get a really long decimal that goes on forever. Now, B says if your answer is not a perfect square, which it's not because we got a decimal. If it's a perfect square, you do not get a decimal. We need to round to the nearest tenth. So I get approximate 34.64, right? We look at the hundredth, that is below 5, so we stay at 34.6 millimeters is the length of one side. Here we go, a square painting. Okay, again, we have a square painting. Area of a square is side squared. The area, well, is 460 square centimeters. We want to find the length of one side. To do that, you have to square root. What you do to one side, we do to the other. Again, round to the nearest tenth. So my side, this is not a perfect square, so I get 21.44. This is below 5, so my number stays at 21.4 centimeters. Now when we see something with a square root, so when you square root a number and you get the number 9, what number are we square rooting? Again, the inverse operation of square rooting is to square. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So the square root of x squared is just x. 9 squared is 81. Same thing here. Square this side to get x. Those cross out because they're inverses of each other, and we're left with just x. And then square this side, and we get 289. Here looks a little bit different. So this whole side is being square rooted. To undo the square root, we need to square because those are inverses. What we do to one side, you do to the other. So we have 9, or x plus 9 after squaring equals 144, because all we do is we drop the square root. Now we solve like we've been doing. This is now a one step, and I get 135. So take note into how these two are the same and how they are different. They're the same because they have a square root. They're different because this does not have an entire side that is being square rooted. Here, first, we have to subtract 9 because that is outside of the square root. That is furthest from our variable we are trying to solve. So that is gone, and we're left with the square root of x equals 3. And then you square each side. When you square a square root, those cancel because they're inverses of each other, and we're left with x. 3 squared is 9. When you square a number in an equation, you get one answer. When you square root to solve an equation, you get two answers. And that is solving by squaring and square rooting.